Alrighty, welcome back. I took a break and got me another frozen drink. Very good. If I can get the straw in. So, I said I would talk about the probably the most famous independent league, and you probably know what it is. If you don't, it's probably not going to be surprising, but ECW. ECW, Extreme Championship Wrestling, in my opinion at least, and I'm sure the opinions of others, is widely considered the most successful independent promotion ever. And I know people are going to say, well, what about TNA? I mean, TNA was technically an independent. And you can say that, but the reason why I consider ECW the biggest and most successful indie promotion ever is for the simple fact that they made it big out of absolutely nothing. You know, they started off as just this regular run-of-the-mill company doing spot shows like once a month, and they became the number 3 promotion in the entire world, or at least the United States. I don't want to say the entire world, but in the United States anyway, you had the WWF, which was owned by Vince McMahon, WCW, which was owned by Ted Turner, and ECW. ECW was duking it out with the 2 biggest companies in America, and they were going toe to toe with them, and they were standing their ground. But I'm not going to get into the whole thing about ECW because I have a lot of stories about ECW that I'd like to share, but really what I'll talk about is pretty much their defining moment. The moment that I think a lot of indie groups would love to do, and ECW somehow did it. And that was their first pay-per-view. And anybody in the wrestling business who is anybody has put on a pay-per-view. So, to really set it up, ECW kind of started off in 95-ish. It was kind of part of it was like the Tri-State Wrestling Alliance, I believe. And they folded, and then Todd Gordon, who was a promoter, bought it up, created this product, and got it out there, and then hired Paul Heyman to run it. Eddie Gilbert actually had run it before, and then Paul Heyman had come in. And Heyman, who is widely considered the mad scientist of pro wrestling, and he was, created this new concept, at least in America. They were doing it elsewhere. I think Puerto Rico really was starting to do like the blood and guts type wrestling that would be forever considered hardcore wrestling. And Japan started doing it. So really Paul Heyman kind of borrowed the idea, okay, blatantly stole the idea if you want to go there, and made it his own. But from 95 to 96, ECW was really trying to find their identity, and they were doing all these weird and crazy things. They were doing matches involving barbed wire. They were going through tables. They were getting hit with chairs on a nightly basis. They were really trying to set themselves apart from the other groups. This was around the time where they were still doing like the cartoonish characters. You know, both WCW and the WWF were really targeting towards children. ECW was tapping into the 18 to 45 demographic. And they were going for the blood. They were going for the violence. They were going for, the really raw type interviews. And if you haven't watched it, find a copy, or somebody that has a copy, of The Rise and Fall of ECW. It's a really good DVD. It actually explains from beginning, middle, and end of ECW. So, during all this, they were gaining so much momentum, and Paul Heyman had such a mind for it. He could turn anybody into a star. It's been said over and over again that he could take somebody with no talent and turn them into a star. Really? There's
Strabama!
Dog got a Strabama.
Yeah, you can check it out.
He got a
Yeah, buddy.
He got a frozen drink like I did.
This is my second one, by the way.
Well, now what's all in that? I think it was
like a banana.
It was banana rum, I think.
Yeah, and it's good. It's good as hell.
So like strawberry ice and
I
banana
don't know,
rum.
dude. That first one must be a little bit strong because I'm starting to buzz a little bit.
He's starting to buzz.
Sweet. So probably another one of these or two. I'll be good. Or 4 or 5.
He's gonna get arrested tonight, I guarantee it.
I'm not gonna fuck up.
Anyway, probably the biggest example of Paul Heyman making something out of nothing would be Mikey Whipwreck. Mikey Whipwreck was like 5'5", 120 pounds of no talent, really just kind of. He would be the kind of guy that would always dream of being a wrestler, but never really happened. But Paul Heyman saw something in this kid, and if you watch his older matches, you will see that Mikey Whipwreck does not get a single amount of offense in at all, but somehow always wins. Like he'll roll up the guy and pin him. It's really weird, but really, like he took if you remember Scotty Flamingo, he turned out to be Raven. He took the Tasmaniac and turned him into Taz. Paul Heyman was just such a genius of making something out of nothing. He was true genius at that. Sucked at money, but was a true genius. So, this is a first. I'm actually texting as I'm filming. I'm so unprofessional. So, all leading up to their very first pay-per-view. And this is where you make it in this business. If you can make it to a pay-per-view, you've succeeded in something because you've built an audience. So they sent letters to, I think, Time Warner or AOL or whatever the cable channels were at the time, saying, like, we want a pay-per-view. The ECW fans were fucking rabid. You ever watch an ECW show, those fans are totally different because they don't just cheer for their favorite wrestlers. They don't just boo the heels. They will cheer the company name. Anytime something weird or crazy or extreme happens, they scream, ECW, ECW. You'd never seen that before. Hulk Hogan drops the big leg on Andre the Giant at WrestleMania 3. People weren't screaming, WWF, WWF. It just showed how people conceived ECW. It was really just a movement, and they were part of it. So they got in touch with the cable companies, and they got a pay-per-view slot. But actually a month or two before the pay-per-view came out, they had a match in Massachusetts, I believe. It was the Gangstas, New Jack and Mustafa, against Devon Dudley, and it was supposed to be Axl Rotten, who we saw in Newville, by the way. And Axl Rotten had something going on, personal, he got injured, I don't know. But they brought in this big, like, 400-pound dude. And he says, like, I'm a pro wrestler, I've trained, and this is, like, everything. And they're like, all right, fine, we're gonna have you in a match. He said, okay, great. So during the match, if you don't, have you never seen New Jack wrestle? You be in for a treat, because this motherfucker, he'd run in with a cart full of weapons and use every single weapon in that trash can or cart that he brought. He would bring a chair. He would bring a cookie sheet. He would bring a frying pan. He would bring a computer keyboard. I seen this asshole bring, I believe it was a Sega Genesis or a Super Nintendo. It was an old school system. He played the controller for a little bit, took the console, and cracked somebody over the head with it. Like, not an ounce of wrestling ability out of the man, but my God, was he fun to watch. ECW, that was what it was. ECW was fun to watch. But during this match, New Jack took this, I guess, a razor blade or an X-Acto knife. I believe that's how he described it. But he took this blade and proceeded to carve into this guy's head. Like, he just stuck the blade into his head and just carved, literally slicing this kid's head open. And the kid had his head down on the mat, and when he lifted it up, there was literally a pool of blood on the mat. And you can even see in his eyes, he's like, oh shit, that was, this, no, like, something is wrong here. But it turned, I think his father was actually at ringside, and this is on YouTube, by the way. Look this up. When I'll tell you what to look for after this, but you actually hear, I think, his father outside the ring. He's like, you know, get him the fuck out of there. He's only 19 years old. Or 17 years old. He was a kid. He was underage. The legal age, I think, to wrestle was 18. This kid, I think, was 17. So he lied. He lied about being trained as a wrestler. He lied about being an actual licensed wrestler. And here he is getting carved up like a fucking pig. And it turned out that New Jack was actually going to get charges filed against him. I think by the Massachusetts PD was going to file charges against New Jack for this, but they later got dropped because, again, this kid lied about his age. And if you want to look it up, it's called, just look up on YouTube, Mass Transit Incident. And you will find this. It is some of the most disturbing fucking shit you'll ever see in wrestling. Because New Jack literally carves this dude's face up. And there is blood all over. It looked like a fucking slaughterhouse. Brutal. But because of this, they had their pay-per-view canceled. So Paul Heyman, he went to the pay-per-view companies and he begged and pleaded, you know, yelled and cursed and threatened to sue. The same thing Paul Heyman always does. So they said, all right, we'll give you one more chance. And their very first pay-per-view was in 1997 called Barely Legal. And no, that is not a porn title. I knew Dog was might have said something about that, but no.
I almost did.
It's not a porn title. It was called Barely Legal.
I was gonna keep quiet until you said something there.
But it wasn't a porn title.
It's better than Almost Legal.
Almost, yeah. Mass Transit was almost legal until he got carved up. Look that thing up, Dog. You'll see what I mean.
What's it called?
Just look on YouTube. Just look up Mass Transit Incident, and you'll see it. I can't show it, but you can see it. But anyway, their very first pay-per-view was held in the ECW Arena, which was actually a bingo hall in South Philly, where they would have their wrestling matches, then clear everything out and set up the bingo tables for people to play bingo at. Really cool. But I have a copy of this pay-per-view, and it is, for lack of a better word, awesome. This is one of the better pay-per-views I've ever seen. And this is from a little rinky-dink company who was desperately trying to compete with the WWF and WCW. They had the very first match they had was the Dudley Boys against the Eliminators, Perry Saturn and John Cronus. And if you've never seen the Eliminators wrestle, wow. I had never seen such synchronized. That's the word I was looking for. I had never seen so many moves synchronized between these two, because one guy would like kick Bubba Ray Dudley in the face. The other guy would do a sweep kick on him and knock him down. And then John Cronus would like do a flip, and Perry Saturn would do a senton, and it's just amazing. The Dudley Boys got absolutely no offense in that match, and they were the tag team champions. It was a fucking squash, but it was one of the most entertaining squashes ever. They had Chris Candido against... Oh no, Chris Candido was hurt. He was supposed to wrestle Rob Van Dam, but instead Lance Storm wrestled Rob Van Dam. And Van Dam hadn't even been on the pay-per-view, and that's when he was kind of going back and forth. Actually, the funniest part was that the way people found out about Barely Legal was off of the WWF. Paul Heyman had actually gone to Vince McMahon and said, "Hey, we want to promote this event."
Shit, this is old.
You have it up?
Yeah, Mass Presidents and ECW.
He's a fat dude. He's getting carved up.
Big
right?
fucker.
Yeah.
He's in a cop uniform.
Yeah.
You guys hear the audio? Got a hardwire connected here, so...
Hold on a minute.
We can't show it.
No.
Mr. Obama. Hey, how's it going, everybody?
But yeah. Okay, I'll try and describe this. Devon's just standing there, but... Show fucking Mass Transit. Oh no, there he is.
The big dude.
Yeah. Now this kid's only 17 years old.
It looks like it was dated in... Oh, that's in 96.
Oh, this is the full match.
Yeah, the whole deal. Now, I couldn't find it on YouTube. I guess I could only find it over here on this site. Just look it up on Bing. It'll pop up.
Yeah, I don't know when exactly he gets cut, but he gets just brutalized. I don't know if you can fast forward or not.
I can. Yeah, where do you want me to...
It doesn't happen.
Maybe go halfway through it?
Try right there. See what happens. Yes. Right there. Look how much blood is on that dude. And there he goes again. He's gonna...
What the fuck is he holding?
Listen.
Ooh.
You hear that? He's saying, ring the fucking bell, he's 17. But did you see how much blood was on that mat?
Due to copyright laws, we can't show this, so you have to look it up.
But dog, you saw how much blood was on it.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Okay. I mean, it looks like a slaughterhouse, really. But... Where was I? Oh, Paul Heyman had gone to Vince McMahon and said, Vince, or actually no, I think Vince might have even gone to Paul Heyman, because he had heard about ECW. They had actually gotten involved in one of their pay-per-views, and the fans were chanting like very loudly, ECW, ECW, and he couldn't ignore it. So he actually promoted ECW's pay-per-view on a Monday Night Raw, which was unheard of. That would be like...
They're still saying ring the fucking bell.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, the match goes on. But that would be like...
Holy shit. He's pretty gouged up, too.
Mm-hmm. What would that be? That would be like WCW promoting one of their pay-per-views on the WWF. Unheard of. But they actually...
bandaging him up.
They actually had a night where ECW was having like matches on Raw. Again, unheard of. So, let me move that back here a little bit.
Don't break it.
I'm not breaking your toilet, don't worry. So, the other match... Oh, there was a 6-man tag team match with like guys from Japan. Probably one of the best matches ever. Definitely top 10 of my favorite matches is the 6-man tag team match at Barely Legal. If I can remember who it was, Gran Hamada, the Great Suzuki, and I believe there was somebody called Yakasiji, yeah, against Taka Michinoku, Dick Togo, and Men's Teo, Terry Boy. Great match. One of the best ever. They had the franchise, Shane Douglas, who I have his shirt. He was the TV champion. He wrestled, I think, Pitbull number 2. The big draw of the night was the most anticipated match in all of ECW. It was Taz against Sabu. And this was the genius of Paul Heyman. Because Paul Heyman and Taz and Sabu somehow managed to build up the anticipation for this match, and Taz and Sabu didn't even touch one another until that pay-per-view. I believe Sabu had gotten fired beforehand because he had chosen to go to Japan instead of doing ECW. And for a whole year, Taz kept calling Sabu out. He just said, like, Sabu, you're a fucking pussy, and I'll kick your ass, and all this shit, like, for a whole year, until finally Sabu arrived. Like, he came back. But that just showed the genius of Paul Heyman, that he managed to build this match up to just a fever pitch, and they didn't even touch one another. They didn't have any kind of interaction at all until the pay-per-view. And it was a great match. I mean, don't get me wrong. Same with Taz. I think Taz believed too much of his own hype. I believe that Paul Heyman and Taz had the world believing that he was the baddest motherfucker on the planet. And I think Taz started believing that himself. And Sabu, his work speaks for himself, because if you look at pictures of this guy, he has just road maps of scars all over his body from barbed wire matches and, you know, being blown up. And the guy does not get enough credit for half the shit that he has done. But the main event was, I believe, a 3-way dance between the Sandman, Big Stevie Cool of the Blue World Order. Not the New World Order, the Blue World Order.
Is that kind of a knockoff?
It was a knockoff, and let me tell you, it was just as, if not more popular, than the NWO. The Blue World Order, it was Stevie Richards, Big Stevie Cool, and Terry Funk, who was, I believe, 53 at this time. He was old. He's been old since 1930. But the winner of this match would wrestle the champion, Raven, at the very end of the night. And so these guys have the 3-way dance. ECW's version of the 3-way dance, they call it a triple threat now, but their version was 3 guys would wrestle each other. If one guy got pinned, they were eliminated, the match continued. I love that setup. I don't know why the WWF or E or whoever still uses this always just goes like one fall. It should always be 2 falls. Because you beat one guy, but you didn't beat the other. And that's how they use that to get titles off of guys that they don't want to lose. You know, if John Cena was world champion right now, and he was in a 3-way with, let's say, Bryan Danielson and Randy Orton, and they didn't want John Cena to lose the title or get pinned, like to lose his credibility, they would just have Randy Orton or Bryan Danielson pin the other one. They would never even touch Cena, and Cena would lose the title. Bullshit. So Terry Funk wins, and he's beating the hell up, and out comes Raven, who probably one of the more effective heels of the time, because he was just this grunger. He was all woe is me, my life sucks, and I blame all of you for it. But he had the greatest catch. I loved the way he ended all of his interviews. He would just look at the camera and he'd be like, quote the Raven, nevermore. And I marked out every single time he did that. I'm like, I love that. I would love to be able to do that. Like, every time I'm done talking to somebody, I would love to be like, GMC, built tough. Or something like that. Something along those lines.
He stole Ford's emblem.
I don't care. Anyway.
I don't care.
At this point, Tommy Dreamer, who was pretty much the benchmark of ECW, he was doing commentary that night. By the way, mentioning commentary, Joey Styles did the entire pay-per-view by himself. If I had to rank my commentators throughout history, Joey Styles would be my number 2 guy. It would go Jim Ross, Joey Styles, Gorilla Monsoon, Jesse Ventura, Bobby Heenan. Those are my top 5. Joey Styles is my number 2, because that guy can carry an entire pay-per-view by himself. If I was in charge of the WWF right now, WWE, I would fire the 3 Stooges that are on Raw right now, and I'd put Joey Styles out there. And let me tell you, he would be able to carry all 3 of those assholes for 3 hours. That's how good Joey Styles is. Anyway, Dreamer's doing commentary with Joey because he was supposed to be in the main event. He gave it to Terry Funk because he was Tommy Dreamer's mentor. And so Funk's getting destroyed. Raven, he's taunting Tommy now. He's like, I'm going to put this old motherfucker through 3 tables and I'm going to end all of it. Like, I'm going to end his fucking career and there's nothing you can do about it. And he's like, oh, you motherfucking Raven, I'll kill you, you bastard. And from behind Tommy Dreamer comes Big Dick Dudley.
Big Dick.
Big Dick Dudley, that was his name. And he was about to choke slam Tommy Dreamer off of the scaffolding that they were on top of, down to the floor where there was a bunch of tables. But Tommy manages to nail Big Dick with a low blow and push him off and through the tables. And as this is going on, Terry Funk manages to roll up Raven and pin him. And that's it. Terry Funk's your new ECW champion. Now, the funny part about this story is, they had actually mentioned this in other interviews, that right before his win, they said that the power generator that they had bought to power this building up for this pay-per-view blew up. Like, just completely blew up 10 seconds after the pay-per-view went off the air. So, as soon as Terry Funk's arm was raised and they handed him the belt and they faded to black at the end, the transformer blew up and the whole place went black. And everybody had said, had that happened 10 seconds earlier, they would have lost the feed of the pay-per-view and it would have been a disaster. So, thankfully, the transformer waited to blow up afterwards. But, all in all, if you can find a copy of Barely Legal, get it. You will not, if you are a wrestling fan, you will not be disappointed. It's one of the best pay-per-views I've ever seen. And this was from a rinky-dink company operating out of a bingo hall in South Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And they managed to stand toe-to-toe with Vince McMahon and Ted Turner. If that's not something to admire, I don't know what the hell is. Because you don't see that anymore. TNA tries desperately to compete with Vince McMahon, But honestly, they're just copying him. And you can't do that. You're never going to beat Vince McMahon at sports entertainment. I'm sorry. You can't beat him at that. You have to do other things to compete. You have to showcase wrestling. That's what ECW did. It showcased something different. The best way I can describe it is the way Paul Heyman described it. Back in the 90s, wrestling was the equivalent of the hair bands of the 80s. You know, wrestling was your Poisons, your Motley Crues, your your Warrants, your White Snakes, all these hair bands. And all of a sudden, here comes Nirvana with their greasy hair, their flannel, and their depressed lead singer. They come onto the music scene and change everything overnight. And I gotta commend Nirvana for that, because they did something that nobody else even thought of that could be done. And that was kind of take the hair bands and push them off to the side and make way for a new brand of music. I don't like Nirvana, but I give them credit where credit is due. They did help change the music industry overnight. And that's what ECW did. ECW changed the whole way wrestling was perceived, because as soon as ECW started making it big, you saw the WWF starting to do the Attitude Era. That's where they started getting more extreme. They started getting more more violent, more sex-filled, more. They just started getting more and more extreme, more adult. That's what ECW was. WCW started doing the exact same thing. They started catering. They were more towards the children, but when the WWF started blowing them away in the ratings, they had to compete. So they came out with more risque characters, more violence. That was all from ECW. No matter who says it, and no matter if they deny it or not, ECW had a massive legacy. It helped to influence how wrestling is today. Nobody can deny that. Nobody can argue it. And if they do try and argue it, they are a fucking liar. Because ECW changed the landscape of all wrestling. It was the most successful independent company ever. And probably my favorite company to date. Because, well, I was going to say they never disappointed me. There are a few exceptions to that rule. They've done some shit that I probably wouldn't think they should have done, but fuck it. They were the rebels. I'll get to that some other time. That's really my big rant on independent wrestling and ECW. I miss that shit. But I'll talk more about ECW some other time, and this will probably be my last video here in Vegas, so next time you see me, I'll probably be back home. Boring home. Squishy Frog will be on the couch behind me. Probably falling over. But yeah, ECW. Look that up. Look up mass transit. Look up anything about ECW, because it was a wild time, and I was glad to be a part of it. So thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you later.